This week in the conversation, I have the honor to receive Orlando-based writer Miyoshi Gordon. She is a memoirist, and we're going to be talking about her award-winning memoir, Broken. But before we get into the video, I just want to remind you that the conversation is a CSMS magazine production. And also, I'm encouraging you to subscribe to this channel because if you do, don't forget to click the notification bell. That way, every time a video is posted, they'll go directly into your portal. So let's get started. Again, my name is Ardain Isma, Chief Editor for CSMS Magazine. I am here with author Miyoshi Gordon. We're going to talk about her compelling book titled Broken. But before we get into the book itself, Miyoshi, would you please tell the audience of CSMS Magazine who is Miyoshi Gordon?
Who is Miyoshi Gordon? I'm an author, entrepreneur, speaker, and I'm founder and CEO of United Divine Purpose Incorporated. It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization. I was in the medical field for 35 years total. I worked 30 in radiology as a supervisor, and then I transitioned to 5 years of human resources, working with the Department of Defense and also 1 year at the Veterans Administration Center.
Wow, so many hats.
Yes.
And a few words, this is a pretty impressive resume.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So what really led you to, just before I get to that, when did you know that you were going to be a writer?
Well, I always wanted to be a writer as far as be an author when they write a book. I always told my family, we have a vast family. We have, there was a total of 12 siblings.
Okay.
And then I had a half brother, which I didn't even know until I turned like 8. Well, it was 15, to tell you the truth, when my father had a massive heart attack and passed away. And at that time, I learned that my oldest brother was really we don't say half brother, but I learned that my mother did not birth him. But my father and mom blended us so well that I didn't know any difference. So I came from a very loving and kind family, right, and really deep rooted in faith.
Right.
And so during the pandemic, our nonprofit organization did a very wide spectrum of COVID-19 project.
Okay.
And we gave back to so many organizations. Just to name a few, we had Cape Fear Valley Medical Center. They're the health system now.
Okay.
We, in collaboration with their foundation,
Right.
as well as in collaboration with the American Cancer Society,
Right.
work closely with the Myositis Association. During the COVID-19, we set out like 800 masks. We gave 5 each to each healthcare worker. If they requested it through our internet, coming through the website, or they called and left messages and we answered them right back or by email. We help Feeding America. We have with healthcare worker meals.
Right.
There was so many projects, I can't name them all.
I mean, let's get over here now because the thing is, so much, Miyoshi.
We have had so much. I have to say our organization really is small, but we spend all the community dollar like it's $1 like every cent.
Right.
So we're able to spread those dollars around. We also, in collaboration, our partnership with Orange County's public schools down here in Orlando, Florida.
Okay.
And then I have certificate of authority our organization does at North Carolina. It's my home state.
Right.
And so we're in collaboration there. Also with the Hope County Health Department, we give back, as well as we give back when we have back to school events in
Okay.
both states, Florida and North Carolina. So we do
So,
quite a bit across the spectrum with both states.
and then it's come my question. I mean, with a small budget to be able to
With a
do
small
all
budget,
this,
yes,
you
we
ought to
keep it.
be, if you allow me to say this, you both involved in community activism and also religious activities also, right? Because you
Yes,
need to have your heart into something to be
yes.
able to achieve so much with a small budget. So let me ask you a question. Um, do you have an impeccable team with you?
I do. They're the most outstanding team I could ever. They are amazing. Right now, since I'm concentrating on my being an author, which is
Right.
in collaboration with my book of what I live each day and what I've gone through, I have right now as interim president, Mr. Clyde Huff, as well as our board of directors are on, and all of us are non-paid.
Okay.
We're doing this from being a servant to others and being to mankind.
Right.
And so we're doing it from my heart, and it's a passion I have. I've had that, I guess, ever since I was a little child that I always cared. And when you come up in that loving family environment, that's what happens. And it carries along through life with you.
Right.
That has not changed with me.
Okay. I can see that. I can see the passion in the face also as you're
Yes, I
doing
have a
this.
passion.
Now, and then one day you decide to sit down and to begin to write the story of your life.
Yes, sir,
Okay.
I did.
So what was the trigger?
Once I came off the nonprofit organization, the COVID-19 Project, it was quiet time for me. I had recently divorced, and it was a trying time going through trials and tribulation, adversities of my life. So I prayed and asked God, was it time to um, write my book?
Okay.
And so 2 weeks later, in the middle of the night, I never forget, on a Wednesday morning at 3 o'clock, a little silent whisper woke me up and said, broken but still a masterpiece. And on the back of the book, he said, glass. And then the whisper was gone. And then that was my confirmation that it was time to write my memoir.
Ah, and I see that you have a mantra next to it, written in quote,
Yes,
voice for the voiceless.
yes. And I'm firm about that because I wholeheartedly believe in the more you inspire and the more you motivate and the more you educate,
Uh-huh.
that even speaking through myositis that I live with on a daily basis is an invisible, incurable disease. And I manage that by keeping in remission.
Okay.
I'm a 14-year breast cancer survivor and I'm
Wow.
an emotional abuse victim.
Wow. Wow.
But I beat
So
all, but I beat all the odds, though. That's the great part
yeah,
with faith and determination and perseverance.
exactly. So writing memoirs also can bring back, gut-wrenching memories.
Yes, yes,
So, and yours seem to be pretty recent because you're dealing with multiple issues
correct.
that may have empowered you,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe propel you to
Yes.
wake up every day and to write more and more and more.
Mm-hmm.
So, how long really did it take you to conceive this memoir?
um, Once I had the confirmation, and I called. There was two publisher I had interviewed, and then the third one I called the next day after the confirmation came.
Right.
And so at that point, it, it was divine intervention because as I spoke with her, she understood she had a past, not like mine, but
Mhm.
she had a similar life circumstances that surrounds the struggles of life, of challenges.
Mhm.
And so right then and there, she said, had you ever been a writer? I said, no, ma'am. She said, what has driven you to be a writer? I said, well, if God gave me the confirmation, I can. She said, okay, just begin writing. And I did. It was like 1, 2, 3 chapters. And then it was like 1, 2 pages, 3 pages, 4 pages. And
Ah,
then as I began to release my feelings and to get into actually, I would say releasing and thinking about my whole life in
uh-huh.
general, from childhood to where I'm at now, the words just flow each day. I just now I have to say I have to take break. I had to take breaks in between
Of
because
course,
my body got fatigued
of
quite a
course.
bit. People don't see that behind the scenes. Like now, I look like I'm not sick, right? So I get that all the
Too funny.
time, and so I have to say that because living with a chronic, invisible, incurable disease, you get that all the time. It's kind of very humiliating at times. I have to say in the past, but now I have embraced who I really am,
Mhm.
and that gives me I would say I'm okay with me the way I am. So I look at me as one that has beat the odds by persevering and determination and have that strong faith in myself,
Mhm.
and also being a strong believer. And while I was in quiet time, I have to tell you, I grew closer to God. It was a more intimacy walk. I knew I was a Christian, but at that point, when you're all alone and you live alone,
Mhm.
you draw closer to God.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Because at that point on, it becomes your soul companion
And it
and a
does.
powerful one too, if you believe in it.
Yes.
Now, you say you felt at one point humiliated. Why?
Because people will look at me, it's been for years, people will look at me and say, you don't look sick. And then I was like, sometimes, like the emotional abuse part, like one of my best days out of 7 days, I would go out to Michael Kors and shop for a nonprofit organization.
Uh-huh.
And I was just crucified for doing that on one of my best days of 7. And I just couldn't understand it at the moment.
Uh-huh.
Then, even though I'm a Christian, I knew that in my former marriage, it was a drug addiction for my former marriage, the first one. I knew it was mental health issue at that point.
Okay.
I have one son that was
Okay.
his father,
Okay.
and he was a very good man to me and took care of me.
Wow.
It's just that you have to know the difference between mental health issues.
Uh-huh.
And so I recognized that early on with him.
Uh-huh.
And so, well, by the time we had a legal separation, but by the time he went and got mental health assistance,
Right.
like a year later,
Right.
and it was a little too late for me
Uh-huh.
because the trust, once you break that trust, and I had
Uh-huh.
my son to raise for 10 years, being a single parent,
Right.
and he was my only child, I just threw myself into my son and took
Uh-huh.
care of him, even though I was diagnosed just 1 year out before I went into being legally separated.
It was tough. There's a
Hmm.
lot to go through.
Yes.
Yeah.
But my son has far exceeded my expectations.
Uh-huh.
He's 35, he's single.
Uh-huh.
He is in a job, I can't even say what it is. He's taking an oath. So, to tell you the truth, I don't even know what he does. But what I do know is he has a compassion for people like I do.
Uh-huh.
And what he does now is a compassion helping others.
Wow. And all that's the best trademark anybody can
Hmm.
have, when
Yes.
it comes down to helping others.
Hmm.
And I love doing that. Me, myself,
Yes.
I I do have a compassion when it comes to social justice.
Hmm.
Helping
And so, my son, I have to tell you, he went overseas voluntarily to
with,
help the military.
uh-huh,
And so he told me, Mom, he calls me mother, excuse me. He said, Mother, I can't um, kill anyone. And I said, I understand. He said, but I want to go overseas. And that broke my heart. I'm like, this is my only child.
right,
And he said, Mother, but listen to me. He said, but when your time is up, your time is up. So he kind of shook me for a moment and understood what he was saying, that when God has destined your time to be on earth, that it's time to go to your heavenly home. It's time for you to go, no matter where you are. So I looked at it from a different perspective, saying, if there are many men and women overseas and they're sacrificing their life for us to be free, so I have to give my son too, as well, to be on the front line along with them, even though he wasn't in the military, but he served along them in the war zone. And so, as of to this day, he works along the military right now.
and you know what, Mayoshi, sometimes you and I know the conventional order
Hmm.
says parents die before the
Yes,
children.
yes.
When it's the other way around, that can
Mm-hmm.
create some major psychological impact on the
Correct.
parent's mind and heart also.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, when he said you, because it's time for him to go, did you feel some kind of a odd feeling,
Yes, sir.
like you felt like your son was slipping out of your hands, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a chance he might not return.
Yes, Dr. Isma, I did because I felt that my only child leaving me. And at that time, I had relocated to Indianapolis, and I was married at the time.
Oh, really?
And so he was in college, and he only had one semester left. But he decided I want to go my mother, and so that was heartbreaking to me. I
Right,
didn't understand it all then,
right.
but as my son went overseas, the military helped him in so many ways to become a young man.
Okay,
They groomed him.
okay,
Uh, he furthered his education.
okay.
He is so educated now; it's unbelievable. He has like 15 to 17 certificates in what he does,
Wow.
as well as his degrees. And I'm just so proud of him. But I also have to give it to the military for standing by him every step of the way. And then he came back home and he completed his degree. Even when he was overseas, he took a class one by one. And even with the internet down, I have to say the professors were very kind to him to let him do his classes late because they understood that sometimes, the military war zone is unpredictable. The
And I
one
know
thing,
too well what you're saying now because as a
yes,
professor myself, I teach introduction to research methods at
yes, sir.
Embry-Riddle University,
Mm-hmm.
and many of my students are military personnel.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to be lenient with them because some of them, they don't really know what's the next assignment or where it's going to be.
That's true.
And then you
Mm-hmm.
have a deadline, you have to meet some deadline. So
Right.
whenever I tell them,
Right. Mm-hmm.
as long as you tell me
That's correct.
in advance, there's no
Yes.
way I'm going to penalize you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my philosophy as a professor. I know exactly what you're saying when you
Mm-hmm.
tell me this. Yeah, a lot of them take courses wherever they are from the basis, military basis, and then that moves the educational process.
Correct. And it's very kind of you all to do that in understanding because some of them are not. I recall easily. My son was in high school and he was taking geometry, and I have to say the teacher was very hard on him at the time, and he was struggling with his studies. And I have to say, in the very beginning, he wasn't an easy learner. He's a visual learner,
Right,
and so I had to get him tutors and everything to help him.
right.
But along the way, there was one teacher. Um, she was very helpful, but all of them ended up being, and then that same teacher, his math teacher in geometry, then at the end, she really understood where I was coming from because I think that my son, she saw him struggling, that he needed to learn a different way once the other teacher spoke with her.
Uh-huh,
But it wasn't just my son. I
uh-huh,
spoke for all of them that learn visually or they may learn a different way.
uh-huh.
I did let my son go to the school psychologist,
Right,
and even with him being there, seeing them, I
right.
let that carry into his college years also.
Uh-huh,
And so with him, he was a better learner, like A, B, C, D, E, F,
uh-huh.
than with essay. But as he became an adult and he becomes stronger in his skills, then he became okay with essay. But everyone doesn't understand that. I'm sure you do because you're a professor, but you understand as a parent where we're coming from
Exactly.
when we attend parents teacher conferences that it's very important
Right.
that we voice our opinions at that time about our children and other students as well.
Okay. So is he part of the narrative in the memoir? Uh,
um, he has a high profile job. I can't speak about him too much,
right.
but he does have a bonus chapter from his childhood.
Okay.
Uh,
I like the way you
like
say
how
it
he
as a
was.
bonus chapter, huh?
Yeah, believe me, I wrote enough in that book that God gave me that
Uh-huh.
I had enough from the book to have a bonus chapter for him. That's amazing, isn't it? So, but all I can say is God guided me every second of my life. I can tell you, even though my days seemed the darkest, but I knew always, my parents always told us those little passages like, this too shall pass, trouble doesn't last always. A prayer changes things, keep praying. And I lean so much back on my heritage, way back with my great grandmother when they used to take us to church. And that means so much to me as of today that and I groom my son right now in faith. And believe me, his Bible that was given at the church back in Fayetteville, North Carolina, that I mean it is torn to pieces, but he still carries it right now. That's the one he had in the war zone. And that means so much to me that he believes in faith and that will carry him through until, he hit hard times in his life and then he knows how to get through trials and tribulations.
Uh-huh. A writer told me once before, it's easier to write about your past when
Hmm.
the past is behind you.
That's correct.
But when you write about your present and you're still
Hmm.
going through that present, it's a whole lot difficult.
It is a whole lot difficult because we're still embracing, like right now, I'm living my authentic life. There is no mask on my face. I used to wear a mask with a smile. Like on the front of my book, Broken but Still a Masterpiece. In that photo of 2019, I went home December. My family didn't even really know that I was legally separated. I lived
Uh-huh.
with my former spouse,
Uh-huh.
legally separated in the same house.
Okay.
So I had to have deep rooted faith within me
To
to
deal
go
with
through those crises, to
exactly.
never know when the personalities will crash. But I
Exactly.
had to lean on my faith to get through that. And believe me, I did.
Mhm,
And so as I look now, as you say, looking at the present,
mhm.
uh, it is easier to write about the past and bring it to the present. But going forward, um, it's different than writing, I have to say, because I could write about something else, but I have a second book in the making, by the way.
We're going to talk
But
about that in a second. But before we get to that second book, I know you do. Let me ask you something. So once the memoir was done, edited, you know, reviewed and everything,
mhm.
and it was the time for the big bang, what I call release date. Okay. So how did you feel, Myoshi?
I felt relieved. I felt there was so many feelings of happiness, and also there was feelings of sadness that my part of my life was still I was dealing with it because people have to understand that grief doesn't go away overnight.
Uh-huh.
That it takes time to grieve. I was just still grieving a second marriage,
Mm-hmm.
and so even though I looked at my book, but it did make me happy when I got my copy, my actual copy.
Uh-huh.
I laid on my living room table and I looked at it and I said, "Oh, I authored a book. That's my name."
This is my baby, huh? And then comes the next part. Usually when publishers publish book, they intend for the author to play his part
Hmm.
of the marketing process.
Correct.
But I believe in your case, Mayoshi, any publisher really picks up your book and ready to publish it shouldn't have that much of a problem because you're such an impeccable person dealing with the communities and
Hmm.
you seem to be well loved and they truly believe what you do. So it's pretty convincing to get someone to, especially you have something that is so true, so many people can relate to your story.
Hmm.
So how did you uh, cooperate with the publisher in that sense when it comes to push your book forward?
Okay, what we did in collaboration was she did all the marker material.
Right.
And before I even published my book, she had me video set up,
Okay.
launch, like when it be published, what date to expect it.
Okay.
When I first had our first conversation, I told her I wanted my book in 30 days. Well, I want it published by December 2020.
Wow.
And she said, "Are you serious?" I, I mean, I hadn't even written it, but I knew what I was told, destined to do, right?
Okay.
So, well, knowing me, And I'm just gonna say it. I'm a perfectionist. I'm a driver in the seat. Always have been.
I know. I can
And
see that.
even when I was smaller as a young child,
Okay.
parents always groomed us to say, make sure you get your homework done. And I have been a honorary student throughout all my life.
Okay.
So when you have that compassion of what you do, it was just a no brainer to me.
Uh-huh.
Once I had the revelation about writing, it was just it just came. So we launched with the videos. We had all the material. She did a launch, immediate release letter. I had all that ready. I had already established all my platforms because remember, I already had my nonprofit organization platforms.
Okay.
So the only thing I had to do was establish my author platforms, and that was
Okay.
on Twitter, Instagram, and
Right.
Facebook.
Right.
And then I have a fan page, my regular, regular, everybody has a regular page, a fan page.
Yeah.
That's on Facebook.
Yeah.
And then I have total 3 on Facebook, 2 on Twitter, 2 on Instagram. So 7. And also I count my website. That's a total of 8. So it's easier for me, see, to go ahead and launch quickly because I had the platforms
Right.
already set up actually.
Was
And
that before
so
COVID or doing
yes,
COVID?
this is on Corvette. Yes. So even though she was making me well aware of, I was involved every step of the way. So we would email, we would communicate daily, like where are you? Do you need my assistance? And once she gave me the launch material, that's all I needed. And
Okay.
so I started putting it on social media platforms. And then what I did a virtual book signing,
Uh-huh.
and had I not, if I known it was going to be that huge, I wouldn't. I would pull back a little bit. But I probably had a good 400 to 500 books that I actually had to send out myself.
Really?
I had executive assistant to assist
Wow.
me, which she's in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Okay.
But however, as far as autographing them, packing them up, and sending them out, I had to actually do that myself.
Uh-huh.
I'm not saying I don't regret it at all. It was a blessing that my book did sell. I think with my book, it's an inspirational book. I'm told
Okay.
that it's a great read that many people in walks of life can relate to what they're
Of
going through
course,
now
yes. Of
in
course,
everyday
yes.
living, with depression, anxiety, with
Uh-huh.
the mental health part, with
Uh-huh.
all parts of my book, I must say, even with the loving family. Anyone in my book can pick up something that they can get from my book, my memoir, to say that they feel like, and they always tell me they can't put it down once they begin to read it, because it's really about someone's life story.
Exactly.
And so I really never exposed my life like that until I was given the revelation to do it. And so I've always been a very quiet person and kept my personal life personal. But when I got the revelation to write, that's when I went on and told my entire story.
And you know what that tells, again, for anyone who's watching this is just another testament
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of people, including African Americans, Black
Mm-hmm.
folks, read.
Mm-hmm.
Me personally, about a year ago, I was invited to speak at a church in Brunel. It's a small community just before you get to Palm Coast.
Mm-hmm.
At a church. It was a Saturday morning, and I walked in there. The church was packed with people, and everybody wanted to hear me, what I had to say. And I
Mm-hmm.
rose to the microphone and began to speak.
Yes.
You could see, you could hear a pin drop.
Mm-hmm.
And after I spoke, people lined up just to get a copy of the book.
Yes.
And you know that what that tells you, there's a misconception. They say that if you block, you're not interested in
Mm-hmm.
anything that's deemed intellectual. And in
Correct.
fact, even in the literature, you have great names like Alice Walker's, so
Mm-hmm.
many impeccable
Mm-hmm.
names that are not even they're just American impeccable writers, not African American. So although Southern literature has been a major part of American literature.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke to a writer last weekend from Louisiana, from New Orleans, Louisiana. She wrote also an impeccable book, and we were talking about cuisine in New Orleans, the Creole cuisine, and she has an organization that promotes young people, young African
Yes.
Americans,
Yes.
who really want to embark upon a journey of writing
Mm-hmm.
and poetry and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
These are the things that we need to enlighten more,
I agree.
because there is a misconception and we need to defeat that misconception. And I like the work that you do. You don't just keep your book to yourself and to friends,
No.
but behind the cover of this book is a compelling message that the whole world needs to listen to. So,
Yes.
and I like that.
Mm-hmm.
So the voice for the voiceless really are grounded in the book, because the thing is, you're talking about issues that average people can relate to.
Yes.
So now, Myoshi, you have a second book. Is that a sequel, or something else totally different from the first one?
Well, it's going to be a spinoff of the first one. My memoir is going to be about raising a strong Black man. I feel that is needed in society. I
Okay.
know being a single parent, it was very difficult. That's not an easy journey. I sacrificed my entire 10 years of my life for my son,
Okay.
and it was well worth it.
Exactly.
Um, I gave my all. I had just recently been diagnosed 1 year out with myositis,
Uh,
and I have a very understanding employer. I love them just like I love my family. And they did not even know that I had divorced until my last name changed. And like some of them now can't believe what I went through. And they say, "You didn't tell us." I said, "Well, I left it that way. The reason why is because that was my happy place."
okay.
And see, with me going to church then and always have been, I grew stronger and I kept my son very busy in society with young people. And so that is very important to keep them busy and not an idle mind. And that's why I want to do a spinoff
Okay.
about young Black men right
Uh-huh.
now, because the percentage being incarcerated
I
is
know.
just staggering to me.
I know.
And so how we can prevent that is we tell our story, and then I give my input, and hopefully I can push that, and
Uh-huh.
then go to be a ministry to the prison. I wouldn't
Uh-huh.
say in prison ministry part, and helping them know that they're not alone either.
Exactly.
Everyone makes mistakes in their life, and I
Right.
have to say they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Some, I'm going to say there are mistakes, but then they don't know they're making mistakes because they don't recognize they have a mental health issue.
Right.
And so
Right.
that's why they're incarcerated.
Right.
But what I have to say is, while they're in there, they need to get mental health assistance, and that just does not happen.
Right.
And
The prison
so
system.
I want to break down barriers that way also, with myself, and helping young Black men, because I know
Uh-huh.
my son could be a great assistance with that also,
Right.
as going with me and
Uh-huh.
speaking on that term, because he's a great speaker and
I can
has a
imagine. Yeah.
he has a passion for helping people. He is such a young man that I look at him, and I have to say thank God. And I hope you use God on your platform, because I do use God on my platform.
He's taking it from mom.
But I do have to give God the glory, because I wouldn't be sitting here today talking to you, because if it wasn't for him, I would not be here. Have lost my mind. There's one thing I want to tell people: I have never in my life thought about any suicidal thoughts in my life. Never. It's because my family, my inspirational friends, my clergy, I have to say they were very good with me.
Yeah, that sense of support uh,
Hmm.
is really important in someone's life, because um, pressures of life can take a toll on the person's, uh,
And it can.
yeah, but your ability to wake up every day
Hmm.
and being able not just to face them but to overcome them
Yes.
give you such a sense of self-control.
Hmm.
you know you always whatever happens during the day,
Right.
but at some point it's going to be behind me.
Hmm.
So that mindset would ultimately guide you through any difficulty whatsoever.
And it does, because you have to keep that mindset. Like each morning I wake up, I am so thankful to have another day of life. And the first thing I do is meditate. That is just part of my ritual day now. I know how important that is. Before, years ago, I didn't understand.
Uh-huh.
I did, but
Uh-huh.
not on a daily basis that I do now.
Uh-huh.
I have to say, fear doesn't grip me anymore. I
Uh-huh.
am fearless. So that makes me live my authentic life like I wish to, and what I was destined to be, instead of being burdened down, depressed, anxiety, panic attacks. Those are not good feelings inside. It doesn't make anyone feel good.
My mother used to say that you should never let yourself being held hostage by fear.
Hmm.
You
That
know,
is true. And that
yeah.
is very true, because you do feel hostage to those feelings. Many people now, and I see it even like on the social media platforms, on my fan base that I know, people, and I even know my family members, some of them still hold back. And but when you realize you have a problem, some, I have to say, some get mental health assistance and
Uh,
some just don't.
uh,
But I am just driven to tell people mental health assistance is so very important.
exactly.
It is helps me, and it has helped me, and it will continue to help me whenever I feel that I need it. Because even though I'm deeply rooted in Christ, sometimes, like now, we in unprecedented times. Think about the economic crisis we're in, the financial difficulties.
Right.
We can't go out like we want to. We're human beings. We're supposed to be outside. We're not supposed to be
Yeah.
inside all the time.
Yeah.
So, you be lonely. I'm not my loneliest, but I do get lonely. I miss my family in North
Uh,
Carolina. I have my son, thank God, down in Orlando, Florida. He came back the year you not believe that he was destined to be right here with me along the way. When he came in, I didn't tell him I was legally separated. He didn't know. We celebrated my 62nd birthday together. And when he handed me the letter to say, we was at the Capitol Grill, and I remember it so vividly. He handed me the letter, and it was the letter that he was accepted for a job in Orlando, Florida.
wow. What a blessing. What a
That was
blessing.
that was a mighty, mighty blessing for me, because see, I'm not alone. I have him. He lives on the other side of town. He's very independent, and I live on the opposite side. But
Mhm.
however, just knowing he's just 35 minutes
Exactly.
from me
Hmm.
gives me so much comfort. Even though I know how Christ is with me, but he calls me. He calls me every day just to say, "Mother, do you need anything?" Or he may text me and
That's
say, uh, he'll get on me if I get down like with water, those essential items that I need. He said, "Why do you get down so low?" I said, "Well, I didn't want to bother you." He said, "Mother, you're not bothering me."
yeah. So you're so blessed to have a son
Yes.
like this. Yeah. Now, since we're getting to the end of our conversation, that's
Hmm.
something I always do. Uh, because in the business of writing, writers always have their favorite or one favorite writer. It is one. It doesn't have to be an American writer, but anyone you want to share it with the audience of CSMS Magazine, who that person, who that writer is. We want to know.
I have several admirers of writers, but the one that stays true to my heart and I can feel her is Maya Angelou.
Okay.
When she has her poems and she reads her poems and not only her books, I can feel her in her expressions, similar to Amanda Gorman.
Okay. Okay.
She's one of my favorites
A
now
lot of
too.
people are saying that maybe she's following the same
Yes.
Maya's footsteps.
Mm-hmm. And so with Maya Angelou, it came from like my heritage of family, like through her struggles of life. And then as I look at her in films, such as the Tyler Perry movies with Cicely Tyson,
Okay, I remember
I
that.
reflect back on my generation and my great grandmother and my grandmother, my mother, back in those days when they raised us. And
Okay.
so with Maya Angelou, uh, I kind of reflected back in my generations of that's how I came about. And when she had her poems and how they're written and the words that sting you to your heart if you listen to them,
Uh-huh.
that was exactly um, the tenacity, I would say,
Uh-huh.
that was given uh, a reflection from those poems that I grasped.
Okay. So for those reasons, she is your number one.
Hmm.
Okay. Especially
And
I rise.
yeah,
I
I
rise.
rise. That's one of
And
my
I
favorite.
rise.
That is my favorite. That's one of my. I would say the top favorite of her. I rise
I
because
rise.
I always say you rise when you lift others too,
Right.
and when you
Right.
lift others, you do rise.
Uh-huh.
And so, if you listen to Maya Angelou, what was she doing? She was raising all us up at the same time she was rising.
And you know what? If I want to reinforce this, Nelson Mandela says,
Yes.
what makes a person a great person is not because of the fact that he never falls,
Mm-hmm.
because of his ability to rise each time he falls.
I know he's another great one too.
Yeah.
I told you I
So,
had several of them,
yeah.
but the one you have written in the my choices
Uh-huh.
of the choices you had given me of the three, I chose Maya Angelou. But I have truly many admirers of different nationalities. I do.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Now, it's just one lesson you want to give to a viewer out there, or many viewers, um, someone who's going through the same thing, or who has a relative, a family member going through the same thing. What lesson would you give that person?
My message to them, to everyone, is to never ever give up, no matter how sad the situation you're in. Always keep the faith and know that everything will work out for the best.
Uh-huh.
With perseverance and determination, you can, in trials and tribulations in your life, those adversities do not remain there forever.
Uh-huh.
Just keep remembering the passages, this too shall pass.
All right.
Trouble doesn't last always, and it doesn't. It will pass. So, in those moments of despair, reach down within yourself and pull that faith, your strongest faith that you can pull out, that
Uh-huh.
you're going to make it no matter what hits you in life. Because me, again, I am not exempt from troubles and trials and tribulations and adversities in my life because I'm human. And so, what I give to them is that I will continue to inspire, motivate, and educate people on all levels, walks of nationality, ethnicities, that never ever give up. I'm
Okay.
just a living testimony of what you see, that I made it. I beat all the odds.
And with that, I'm going to say it was just a pleasure to sit down and have that conversation with Miyoshi Gordon, an impeccable writer from Orlando, Florida. And I'm sure you're not going to leave me in the dark when the second book is released.
No, I would not, Dr. Isma. I make sure and send you, notify you as soon as it is launched.
Okay. All right. So don't go yet. Okay.
And
Don't go
thank
yet.
you so very much for letting me have your platform today. That means a lot to me. Um, CSMS Magazine, I sincerely thank you, and Dr. Ardain Isma, because that's what we do. We inspire, we motivate, and we educate. And we're trying to keep everyone to know that never, ever give up.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Well, we won't give up. Whole entire story of Black
Mhm.
people in America is a story of daily struggle, of survival, resistance, and fighting for social justice, for
Mhm.
gender equality, for racial
Yes.
equality. It's an entire, it's a daily struggle, but that's what shapes our character,
Mhm.
makes us stronger because we're used to fighting. So thank you so much for
So very
your kind
welcome.
words, CSMS Magazine, and we'll do it again.